Happy New Year, or almost New Year, or whatever time of year it is when you're watching this. For me, it is the very tail end of 2025, and I figured this is as good a time as any to take a look ahead at some of the video games coming out in the new year. So, without further ado, here are 2026's biggest game releases. Before we get into it, just a friendly reminder that this is by no means a 100% comprehensive guide to all of the games coming out in 2026, as many of those haven't even been announced yet. Also, as always, release dates are subject to change. I made a video very much like this one exactly a year ago in which I told you that GTA would be the biggest game of 2025, assuming it came out in 2025, which it didn't. So this is true in our regular monthly video game release videos, but it's especially true when we're talking about games that are 11 months away or games that don't even have release dates yet. So take all this with a grain of salt. On January 15th, Animal Crossing's New Horizons gets a new lease on life and also a new mortgage to pay off when the beloved debt, yard work, and interior decoration sim comes to Switch 2. And if you happen to be one of the 50 million people who bought Animal Crossing on the original Switch, you'll be happy to hear that you can upgrade to the Switch 2 version for just $5. Meanwhile, if you're still playing on Switch 1, you'll also be getting access to a ton of new features with the 3.0 update, which adds a bunch of stuff like hotel renovation and in-game items based on other Nintendo properties, as well as LEGO's line of Animal Crossing sets. You can't spell purchase a video game in January without JRPG or a lot of other letters, but this is the time of year when fans of that particular genre are bound to be especially busy. Still on the 15th, there's Legend of Heroes Trails Beyond the Horizon, which is the 17th installment in the Legend of Heroes series, or the 13th installment in the Trails series, and a direct sequel to 2022's Legend of Heroes Trails Through Daybreak 2. You got all that? That's coming to all the Switches, PlayStations, and PC. On the 22nd, Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade comes to Nintendo Switch 2 and Xbox Series, as well as Xbox on PC. This includes the base game with all the visual and technical improvements that it got when it was ported from PS4 to PS5, as well as a whole side story that follows Yuffie, and the latest release will add a new streamlined mode that maxes out all of your party's stats and has attacks do 9,999 damage just so you can blow through the story without anybody giving you a hard time. Not quite a JRPG, but definitely JRPG adjacent, Dynasty Warriors Origins also hit Switch 2 that day alongside the Visions of Four Heroes DLC expansion, which also comes to the other platforms that game is already on. On January 26th, Highguard drops, which is the new PvP raid game from a bunch of ex-Respawn devs who worked on Titanfall and Apex Legends. You can definitely see some similar DNA, but it's going a very different direction, and instead of a bunch of wall-running dudes and Neil Blomkamp-looking mechs, it's got some fantasy flair, so if you ever wanted to bear arms while riding a bear, go nuts. That's free to play on PC, PS5, and Xbox Series. Finally, rounding out January's JRPGs, on the 28th, there's The Seven Deadly Sins Origins, an open-world RPG based on the hit anime series for PS5, PC, and mobile. And then on the 30th, there's Code Vein 2, the sequel to Bandai Namco's 2019 vampire anime Souls-like, which is on PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. At some point in January, 2XKO will hit PS5 and Xbox Series, which is Riot Games' 2v2 fighting game featuring a roster of characters from League of Legends that's been in early access on PC since October. JRPG season continues into February. On February 5th, Dragon Quest VII Reimagined hits PS5, Xbox Series, both Switches, and PC. Originally released stateside for PlayStation 1 way back in 2001, and then 3DS 15 years after that, it is now getting another modern overhaul. JRPGs aren't exactly known for being concise, but this one is infamously beefy, so don't be surprised if you sink 100 hours into it just doing the main quest. If you'd like to play another overhauled version of a turn-of-the-century classic renowned for its role-playing systems, the original Deus Ex gets a nice shiny coat of modern paint courtesy of Aspyr, who most recently gave us remasters of the first two Tomb Raider trilogies. That one is on PS5, Xbox Series, Switch, and PC. If you'd rather just make a bunch of colorful characters hit each other in the face, My Hero Academia All's Justice is a 3v3 arena fighter featuring several dozen characters from the beloved anime series. That is on PS5, Xbox Series, and PC on February 6th. Still on the 6th is Nioh 3, the third installment in Team Ninja's Tough as Balls Souls-like series, is actually its first true sequel, as Nioh 2 took place before the events of the first game, which probably has no bearing whatsoever on the moment-to-moment combat that is the main selling point here. That's on PS5 and PC. On February 11th, Romeo is a Deadman is the latest wackadoo action game from Suda51 and the fine folks at Grasshopper Manufacture who gave us such cult classics as Killer 7 and No More Heroes. This latest one looks to be as stylish, absurd, and over the top as we've come to expect. That's on PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. And just as a side note here, I've had the pleasure of interviewing a lot of really interesting people in this job, and Suda is one of my absolute favorites. We did an interview with him years ago where we asked him as many stupid questions as we could think up, and he answered all of them without skipping a beat with the weirdest answers imaginable.
If dogs laid eggs, would you eat the eggs?
Yes.
Very happy to see he's keeping busy making weird, cool games. On the 12th, Yakuza Kiwami 3 and Dark Ties hits everything but Xbox One. Yakuza 3 originally came out for the PS3 back in 2009, and though it was included with the Remastered collection that came out in 2019, that version of Yakuza 3 didn't get any major graphical or gameplay improvements. Kiwami 3, on the other hand, is a full modern overhaul, so this should play as great as it looks, and the Dark Ties expansion is a whole new side story in case the regular base story of Kiryu managing an orphanage and beating a bunch of dudes' asses while he's wearing a Hawaiian shirt isn't a cool enough story on its own. Which it is, it's a very cool story. It's a really sweet game, you should play this game. I love Yakuza. Still that day on Switch 2 is Mario Tennis Fever, which might sound like a fun casual sports game, but it's also a very serious medical condition that can be deadly if not treated immediately. If you develop symptoms of Mario Tennis Fever while playing this game, please consult a Dr. Mario immediately. That was a stupid joke, but I went with it. On the 13th, we're getting High on Life 2, the follow-up to the excellent 2022 first-person Metroidvania. In between the first game, it's High on Knife DLC, and now this, I gotta give the team at Squanch Games credit for shipping 2.5 Metroid Prime likes in half the time it took Retro to get Metroid Prime 4 out the door. Also, High on Life 2 is the only way you can legally purchase the classic 1991 Wisdom Tree platformer Bible Adventures for current consoles. That's right, they put entire bad NES games inside this other game that isn't even on Nintendo platforms that I'm aware of. On February 20th, East 10 Proud Nordics is the latest Japanese action RPG rooted in Scandinavian folklore, and it's actually an enhanced re-release of 2023's East 10 Nordics, but with enough added abilities, bosses, and levels that it's apparently very proud of itself. That's coming to PS5, PC, and Switch 2. On the 24th, Tides of Tomorrow hits PS5, Xbox Series, and PC, which is set in a vibrant post-apocalyptic ocean world that is riddled with microplastics, and where the choices made by other players in their game will affect how the narrative in yours unfolds. On February 27th, Resident Evil Requiem, or the 9th mainline entry if you're keeping count, hits Xbox Series, PS5, PC, and Switch 2. I am fairly late to the Resident Evil party, but as somebody who liked 7, loved 8, and adored the remakes, I'm fairly lukewarm on what I've seen of this new one so far, but I'm also willing to give it a shot since the team has been knocking it out of the park with this series lately, and by lately, I mean for the last decade. Oh, also, any Switch 2 owners looking to play catch-up, Resident Evil 7 and 8, aka Biohazard and Village respectively, are also coming to the hybrid handheld that day as well. They got cloud-streamed versions on Switch 1, but this is the first time they will be playable locally on Nintendo hardware, so give them a shot if you haven't. On March 5th, Pokemon Pokopia comes to Switch 2, which sort of looks like Animal Crossing, except you play as a Ditto who is masquerading as a human being, something that will never not be completely unsettling. Why is that Ditto doing that? I don't know. They did that in the live-action film, and I wasn't fond of it. It was very weird to look at. I didn't want to see them doing that, and they did it anyway. Anyway, now it's a whole game. Hitting PC, Xbox Series, and PS5 on March 12th is John Carpenter's Toxic Commando, which is a post-apocalyptic co-op FPS that's been developed by the World War Z team with some input from the legendary horror filmmaker turned grouchy hardcore gamer, and it looks like it'll sit well with anybody wishing that Left 4 Dead hadn't been, well, abandoned in a seemingly deceased state. That same day on PC is Solasta 2, the follow-up to the well-received 2021 tactical CRPG, which should probably click well with anybody who's had their fill of Baldur's Gate 3 but needs to kill some time until Larian eventually puts out Divinity. Also on March 12th, Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly Remake hits all the newer consoles and PC, and that is a modern do-over of the 2003 survival horror game that's sort of like Pokemon Snap but with scary ghosts instead of cute animals. If you'd like to play a game about making friends with scary animals, on the 13th there's Monster Hunter Stories 3 Twisted Reflection for those very same platforms, which puts a more conventional turn-based JRPG spin on Capcom's beloved creature clobberer. If you're more into big, huge, sprawling open-world RPGs with fast-paced real-time combat and very pretty graphics, on the 19th there is Crimson Desert, the single-player spin-off of Black Desert Online that is on Xbox Series, PS5, and PC. Meanwhile, if you'd rather just shoot some old-timey cartoon critters and criminals, Mouse PI for Hire looks like a boomer shooter with some good old-fashioned Cuphead aesthetics, and that is coming to everything. On March 26th, there's Screamer for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. I heard about this game a while ago and I was wondering what was taking so long because the gameplay looked like it was in a pretty good state, and then a trailer dropped during the Game Awards that answered the hell out of that question. In addition to being a racing game, this is also a cyberpunk anime, and it sure looks like those cutscenes took quite a while, so if you ever wished for a cross between Redline and Initial D, where you actually got to play the races, here you go. On April 16th, you can delve into Cthulu, the Cosmic Abyss, a first-person thriller mired in the unthinkable cosmic horrors of the works of H.P. Lovecraft, but set in the future, which should make for a nice cheerful jaunt. That's on Xbox Series, PS5, and PC. On April 24th, Pragmata drops on all the newer consoles and PC, which at one point looked like Capcom's answer to Death Stranding, but also has some Vanquish vibes, and which later on fans were speculating was a Mega Man reboot, but it seems like it's wholly its own thing, where a spaceman and a little girl hack a bunch of robots and then blow them up for reasons that will be hopefully explained. If you want to shoot some different stuff in outer space, on April 30th, the folks who gave us Returnal are back with Saros, a roguelite third-person bullet hell which stars the wonderful Raoul Coley and takes place in a sci-fi setting that's cribbing from Robert W. Chambers' proto-Lovecraftian classic, The King in Yellow. On May 8th, Mortal Kombat 2 hits theaters, the first of two very fun-looking fighting game movies we're getting this year. Something I very much appreciated about the first movie is they didn't make use of the whole roster and saved some big names for round two, namely Johnny Cage, who's looking to be very much the central focus of the sequel, and he's being played by the ever-delightful Karl Urban. Very excited to watch him do a split and punch someone in the groin. We're gonna get even more high-speed chases, plus every other kind of action with 007 First Light, a game that I'm trying not to get too excited about, but which I can't not be excited about because it's from the team behind Hitman World of Assassination, which is already basically the best James Bond game to date, except this one is actually based on Ian Fleming's legendary Spy, and it's got Lenny Kravitz in it. That one's coming to all the newer consoles and PC. LEGO Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight is the closest thing we're getting to an Arkham game anytime soon, and while it might not have the massive roster of playable characters as TT Games' previous LEGO titles, it looks to be making up for it with much tighter combat. That is on all the newer boxes and also PC on May 29th. IllFonic, the studio that gave us asymmetrical multiplayer horror games based on Friday the 13th, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, and Predator, are giving the granddaddy of all slashers the same treatment with John Carpenter's original Halloween, which will have a single-player mode this time around. That one's coming to Xbox Series, PS5, and PC on September 8th, which is not actually Halloween, but hey, close enough. On September 9th, Phantom Blade Zero hits PC and PS5, which looks like a Souls-like and kind of like a hack-and-slash action game. While it is an action RPG that does involve hacking and slashing, it's apparently doing its own thing that is somewhere in the middle or none of the above. Whatever the hell it's doing, buzz on this one is killer. Not a game, but obviously worth including, is the newest Street Fighter movie, which looks like an absolute blast. I've been hyping this movie up since the very first casting announcements trickled out. You got 50 Cent playing Balrog, you've got Jason Momoa playing Blanca, and you've got Orville Peck, a man who never takes his mask off, playing Vega, a man who never takes his mask off. It sounds great. It's directed by Kitao Sakurai, who's best known for his work on The Eric Andre Show and the Eric Andre movie Bad Trip, which involves lots of people getting injured in entertaining ways in public places, just like in Street Fighter, and a few cars getting destroyed, just like in Street Fighter. So I think this movie is gonna kick ass, and we know they're gonna destroy a car, which already just makes it a good Street Fighter movie in my book. That one hits theaters on October 16th, and I'm gonna be there opening night. It's gonna be fun. And of course, I don't even need to tell you about this, but the biggest game of 2026, the 2020s as a whole, and possibly all time, assuming it ever actually comes out, is Grand Theft Auto 6, which is hitting Xbox Series and PS5 on November 19th, so now's a good time to start thinking of reasons that you are not spending Thanksgiving with your family. Basically, every other game in development right now is steering clear of this game. At this point, we've been waiting so long for this game that it just stopped seeming like something I'll ever actually get to play, but someday I think I might actually get to play it, and I hope it's this year. I'm excited to play this game. I realize that we're sort of so nose down on this game being a thing that maybe will come out someday that I just sort of stop even thinking about the part where I actually just get to sit down and play it, but that sounds great.
I've waited years. How many years?
I know that's a controversial opinion, but I'm looking forward to Grand Theft Auto 6. Yeah, that's right, I said it. Anyway, that takes us to the very end of games that currently have release dates, but there are a whole lot more that have vague 2026 releases planned, so here's what we know about right now. Battlestar Galactica Scattered Hopes is expected sometime in the first quarter of 2026, which lets you strategically square off with some Cylons on PC. At some point in 2026, Starfield is supposedly coming to PS5, and while Bethesda has dropped a handful of updates post-launch, I feel like players weren't quite over the moon for this one. But who knows, maybe it'll get some more tweaks and find an even busier player base when it comes to PlayStation eventually. Super Meat Boy 3D adds a whole new dimension to Team Meat's beloved indie platformer, and that one is coming to PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Zero Parades for Dead Spies is the latest offbeat and extremely cerebral CRPG from the developers of Disco Elysium. This is clearly a spiritual successor to Disco, but rather than take cues from detective fiction, Zero Parades is all about the world of espionage, specifically the nerve-wracking, deception-based kind, not the sexy Hollywood kind. That one's coming to PC and PS5. If you want a game that takes place inside books but involves a whole lot less reading, ChronoScript The Endless End is an exploration-based action-adventure side-scroller, or perhaps more accurately, page-turner. That one's on PS5 and PC as well. Thick as Thieves is a PvPvE stealth game from Warren Spector, who was behind the original Deus Ex, and that one is sneaking onto PS5, Xbox Series, and PC at some point in 2026. If you're sad we haven't gotten a brand new Metal Gear Solid game in well over a decade, you might want to keep an eye on Mudang Two Hearts, which looks like a similar blend of stealth, action, tactical military stuff, and completely over-the-top sci-fi nonsense, and that one is coming to PS5, Xbox Series, and PC as well. If you like sequels, don't worry, they're still making lots of those. If you'd like to go on a power trip, you can be a tyrannical little dictator in Tropico 7, and if you'd rather feel utterly powerless, you can get punched so hard that your soul flies out of your body in Mortal Shell 2. Those are both on the big consoles and PC. Meanwhile, on Switch 2 and PC, you can go dungeon crawling through a whole bunch of bullet hells and Enter the Gungeon 2. Onimusha Way of the Sword marks the long-awaited return of Capcom's PS2-era Supernatural Samurai series, and that one's coming to Xbox Series, PS5, and PC. If you want to travel through time and fight some ex-boyfriends, there's Scott Pilgrim EX, the very cleverly titled, long-awaited follow-up to the hit beat-em-up based on Brian Lee O'Malley's beloved Canadian manga and the Edgar Wright films that it inspired. That one's coming to basically everything. Speaking of Canadians, Marvel's fan-favorite Knucklehead finally slices and dices his way onto PS5 sometime in the fall. Insomniac's long-awaited Wolverine game is clearly not shying away from an M rating, but hopefully it's got as much brains and heart as it does blood and guts, which it has a lot of. Two other Marvel games are also in the works, expected in 2026 at some point. There is Skydance's Marvel 1943 The Rise of Hydra, which features Cap and Black Panther's grandpa, who's also Black Panther, fighting in World War II. That one's on PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. And then there is Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls on PS5 and PC, which is a fighting game from Arc System Works that looked like it could be a proper spiritual successor to Marvel vs. Capcom, just without the Capcom. A whole bunch of 2026 games got announced at the Game Awards, which took place after I already wrote and shot most of this video, so if my hair periodically looks drastically different and that skeleton behind me moves, that's why. Or maybe this room is haunted. Who knows? Ace Combat 8 Wings of Thieve is the latest entry in the long-running jet pilot sim that is trying to tempt me into playing it with sequences of stuff happening outside of a jet that are so impressively realistic it makes me forget that I don't actually enjoy the parts of these games where you fly the jet. Don't get me wrong, I think jets are the coolest thing ever invented, and I think this game looks gorgeous and probably has very good aerial dogfighting, but aerial dogfighting in video games just never really clicks for me. Can I just play the parts where you eat hamburgers with this guy and drink beer with your friends on the aircraft carrier? It looks incredible. Look at those potatoes. They're so realistic. The jets are also realistic. That one's on PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Remedy's David Lynchian interconnected universe gets a little bit bigger with Control Resonant, which is the sequel to IGN's 2019 Game of the Year and also connects to Alan Wake 2 and FBC Firebreak apparently, but if you're not keeping track of what's going on, it still looks like it'll be a good time. And if you are keeping track of what's going on, I feel like it'll still be confusing either way. I've always wondered why nobody's made any first-person Souls-like, and the trailer for Decrepit answered that question very loudly because they'd be too f***ing scary. Get this out of here. Too scary. No, awful. No thank you. That one's on PC for now, so if you play on console, you're safe from its horrors, for the time being at least. Did you see that spider? F off. That spider is huge.
Can we panic now?
Less scary looking, but from a studio with some major horror chops, is Ontos, which is from the folks behind Amnesia and Soma, and it takes place in a hotel where a lot of weird stuff is happening, which is to be expected when the hotel is on
Pause for effect.
If you would rather play something nice and cute in space, there is the 2-player co-op adventure Orbitals on Switch 2, which looks just gorgeous. Lots of games look like anime, but this one specifically looks like a bubble-era OVA, which is not just a specific aesthetic, but a certain VHS graininess and poppy sound quality as well, and that is such a pretentious delineation, but as a reformed weeaboo whose formative years were filled with badly dubbed Japanimation from manga video, I applaud this attention to detail. They nailed it. Another co-op adventure game coming sometime this year is something that I bet some of you wish I was, and that is Out of Words, which is a stop-motion, handcrafted puppet game. I have this theory that Jeff Keighley really loves puppets, and if you make a game with puppets in it, he's more likely to feature it prominently in one of his shows. Out of Words was one of the 2 puppet-centric games debuted at Summer Games Fest, the other one being Felt That Boxing, and it showed up again at the Game Awards in between Miss Piggy appearances. I'm telling you, a lot of puppets with that guy.
My little Jeffy Poo.
Anyway, that one is coming to the new consoles and PC. Star Wars Galactic Racer is hitting PS5, Xbox Series, and PC at some point in 2026, and I am stoked. Like 10 years ago, even longer than that, when it was announced that EA had the Star Wars license, I was like, they should get the people who do Burnout and Need for Speed to make a pod racing game, and well, it took a minute, but we're getting something even better. A studio founded by a bunch of ex-Criterion devs is making a game exactly like that, and EA has nothing to do with it, and also, it isn't just pod racing, it's got a bunch of other speeders and stuff too, which reminds me of the criminally underrated 2000 vehicular combat game, Star Wars Demolition. Also, Chris Del Padre is the guy who edits these videos, and sometimes I call him Chris Del Padres because he's so wizard.
You're a wizard.
If you thought that was a stupid joke, well, bad news, because Stupid Never Dies, which is the name of a video game that is coming out at some point on PC and PS5. This is a dungeon crawler action game that has some major Lollipop Chainsaw vibes, but it's actually from a new studio founded by Hiroyuki Kobayashi, who among other things worked on Devil May Cry, Resident Evil, and Dragon's Dogma while he was at Capcom for a million years. Tank Rat is a game where you drive a cool tank around and shoot stuff while also exploring and finding new stuff to make your tank even cooler, and it reminds me of a modern version of Blaster Master. You guys remember Blaster Master? No? Well, it sort of looks like this, except really old. Tank Rat is coming to PS5 and PC. Now, a whole lot of games just have a vague TBA release window, which means that they'll probably come out someday, and while 2026 seems like a safe bet for most of these, some might be even further down the road, and some might just never come out. You never know. If you ever wish that they would do Star Wars flavored XCOM, well, they're doing it. Zero Company, or ZCOM for short, is from a studio of X-Firaxis devs, and it looks like turn-based tactical good time in a galaxy far, far away. That one's coming to Xbox, PS5, and PC. Cinder City is an open-world MMO tactical shooter that looks like it has literally everything in it, and that's coming to PC at some point, though looking at this game in action, I also would not be surprised if it was coming out in 2027 or later. Lords of the Fallen 2 is the sequel to the 2023 Souls-like, which was itself the reboot of a game already titled Lords of the Fallen, so this is technically the third Lords of the Fallen game, but no one cares, I'll stop talking about it now. That's on the newer non-Nintendo consoles and PC. All we've seen of Road Kings is a cinematic trailer where a dude drives his 18-wheeler straight toward a tornado, but that seems like it was enough to get people really hyped. And it's from Saber, the studio that gave us Mud Runner and Snow Runner and the recent Roadcraft, and as a very casual truck game enjoyer, I'm curious to see what their spin on a long-haul trucking sim is like. That one is coming to PC, Xbox Series, and PS5. Warhammer 40k Dawn of War 4 is the first installment in the fan-favorite RTS series in almost a decade, and while it's not from Relic, the studio that gave us the first 3 games, it is from the team behind another well-received RTS, Iron Harvest. That one is coming to PC for now. Tomodachi Life might not have the same name brand recognition as Animal Crossing, but the original me-centric social game released way back in 2014 was the 11th best-selling 3DS game of all time, so it's kind of a surprise it's taken Nintendo this long to make another one. That one's on Switch. Somebody put The Elder Scrolls 6 on our list of upcoming game releases, and while that'll probably come out someday, I would be shocked if it dropped in 2026.
Don't give me hope.
However, if you're after a big, pretty fantasy RPG from Xbox Game Studios, Fable seems a lot more likely for a fall release. This one is from Playground Games, the studio that gave us Forza Horizon, and I'm very curious to see how they tackle something completely different. I guess my big question is, how fast can the horse go, and can you download pervy anime girl decals to put on the side of it? Can you? Anyway, speaking of Forza Horizon, the 6th entry is expected sometime in 2026 as well, and though there have been rumblings it might launch in the first half of the year, there's nothing official on that front aside from the fact that it is set in Japan this time around. Fable and Forza Horizon are both hitting Xbox Series and PC, with PS5 versions probably arriving later on if recent Xbox release strategy is anything to go on. Gears of War turns 20 in 2026, and to mark the occasion, we are hopefully getting a brand new installment with EDay. This is a prequel set 14 years before the first game, and will follow Mark Marcus Phoenix during the events of Emergence Day, which is when the big scary guys you've been shooting at and chainsawing into pieces in all the other installments first started coming out of holes in the ground. That'll be on Xbox and PC for sure, and again, maybe PS5 at some point as well. Another major franchise celebrating a big anniversary in the coming year is Tomb Raider, which turns 30. Do you feel old yet? To celebrate, we're getting Legacy of Atlantis, a full ground-up Unreal Engine 5 remake of the original Tomb Raider. It certainly looks pretty, but I'm curious how much it plays like the original. That'll be on Xbox Series, PS5, and PC. I just remembered back in the 90s calling games that had an over-the-shoulder third-person camera angle Tomb Raider view. Did anyone else do that, or did I just hang out with stupid kids? Or perhaps both? Sound off in the comments with the dumbest thing you remember saying about video games when you were too young to know better. If you ever wished for a distant prequel to the Plague Tale games that swapped the medieval European setting for an ancient Greek one, well, that is very specific, and you're in luck because that is exactly what Resonance of Plague Tale Legacy is, and that one is coming to Xbox Series, PS5, and PC. The Adventures of Elliot, The Millennium Tales is the latest game from the folks behind Bravely Default and Octopath Traveler, and hopefully you won't have to wait 1,000 years to play it. That one is coming to all the newer consoles and PC. Usually it's bad when your game freezes, but sometimes that is a feature, not a bug, like in the bleak, frigid survival game Black Frost, The Long Dark 2, or Frost Rail, a survival game that is also bleak and frigid, but hey, at least you have a train. Those are both coming to PC. And then of course there's also Ikuma the Frozen Compass, which is a coming-of-age story set in the Arctic which seems frigid, but less bleak, and that one's on PC as well as Xbox Series and PS5. If you'd like to try your hand at surviving while submerged in melted ice, i.e. water, Subnautica 2 is hitting early access on PC and Xbox any day now, and by now, I mean at some point in the coming future. Probably 2026, but who knows. If you'd rather go on adventures above the waves, Sea of Remnants is a bright and colorful open-world RPG which is slated to hit PC and PS5 at some point, and if you prefer rails to sails, there's also Densh Attack, which looks like Jet Grind Radio, except you play as a train. Sure, why not? That's on PC as well as Xbox Series and PS5. At some point, The Duskbloods is coming out, which is From Software's Switch 2 exclusive foray into the world of PvE multiplayer. I know I'm not the only one who's disappointed that something that looks so much like Bloodborne isn't a conventional action RPG. Still, as arcane as this game looks, my intelligence is high enough that I'll pump a few points into having faith that Hidetaka Miyazaki and company know what they're doing. That was like a little joke about Bloodborne stats. I wasn't just having a stroke or something. Anyway, if you ever wish that Hotline Miami was about actual animal men and not just men in animal masks, well, get a load of Kusan's City of Wolves. It is exactly what I just described in this video that you're watching. That one is coming to PC as well as Switch, Xbox Series, and both the PlayStations. Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time has been in development for several dump trucks worth of hourglass-grade silica powder, but at some point this year, that one is supposedly coming out, and hopefully it's worth the wait. Is it? I don't know. Another Ubisoft remake we've been hearing about for almost as long is Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, which isn't even officially announced yet, but which will presumably come to modern consoles and PC if and when it ever comes out. Valor Mortis is another first-person action Souls-like from the studio behind Ghost Runner, which also, again, seems like a novel idea, but hopefully it has less spiders than that decrepit game. That one is coming to Xbox Series, PS5, and PC. Originally slated for a fall 2025 release, Directive 8020, a Dark Pictures game, is the latest cinematic choose-your-own-adventure from the folks at Supermassive, which is coming to Xbox Series, PS5, and PC. A lot of these games are coming to Xbox Series, PS5, and PC, and I feel crazy saying those words over and over again.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Dune Awakening has been going strong on PC for a while now, and at some point in the foreseeable future, it'll be getting Xbox Series and PS5 versions as well, so everybody can play in the big old sandbox full of worms. And last but not least, 2026 marks the 30th anniversary of the launch of the Pokemon series. In addition to Pokopia, we're also getting the strategy game Pokemon Champions, but I have a hunch that those aren't the only two Pokemon games that'll be dropping this year, but they're the only two we officially know about right now. So there you have it. That is a look ahead at the biggest games coming in 2026 that we are presently aware of. Some of these games might not actually come out in the next 12 months, and a whole lot more that I didn't mention definitely will. If you would like regular and slightly more accurate breakdowns of what games are coming out on a more timely basis, keep an eye out for our monthly big game release videos. In fact, we should have one going up any minute now about January's games, which includes a few titles that didn't make it into this video for reasons.
Lady, I got 6 reasons why.
Now, I have no doubt in my mind that there's some big, huge, obvious game coming out in 2026 that we totally forgot to mention in this video. So please, whatever we forgot, share it in the comments. But also, and I always say this, and not enough people listen, tell us why this game is something people should care about. Sharing a cool recommendation is one of the best feelings in the world. So if there's a game that you're particularly stoked on that didn't get enough love in this video, give it some love. Tell us all about it. What do you do? Who do you play as? What are your powers? Are there horses? I don't know what this game is that we're hypothetically writing about together, but write something in the comments about the games you want to play in 2026. And as always, a huge thank you to Amanda Medina, Crystal Padre, and Logan Plant for helping these videos come together. And from all of us to all of you, we hope you had a great 2025, and we hope you have an even better 2026. Let's play some video games.